Here to stand on my soapbox and proclaim that to the world.
On this show.
This is the hottest show on the planet right now.
What's the debate?
Ain't no debate.
What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the Vocal Soapbox. I am Enos and with my guy Vocal, man. What's going on, man?
What's the deal? Enos. Another episode. Let's get it.
Yeah, man. Today we're just going to cover some videos reacting to the internet. I want to get your thoughts on some of these videos. Let me go ahead and pull the first video up.
You go ahead and make sure I'm live online.
Yeah, man. So the first topic for the audience, we're going to get into some spirituality, voodoo, hoodoo. And we got Young Jock talking about this, the rapper Young Jock. All right, here we go. You can see that?
I can see it.
All right.
Hey, man. Shout out to Cudgel Family, man. Going crazy. Hey, the new reality TV show, man.
All you got to do is say your name with the dope.
Definitely want to check it out, man. It's a dope situation, you know what I'm saying? It's about spirituality, and it's one with her 3 daughters, man. So you definitely want to check it out, man. Especially check out the first episode, all right? Player, partner, your favorite cousin, Young Chelsea. Hey, Ken's right there. Hey, Ken. Hey, man. Shout out to Cudgel Family, man. Going crazy.
All right, man. Anything stood out with that video?
Nothing really stood out to that video so much. It's just a precursor to the video I really want to talk about. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's more like the precursor to the video I really want to talk about. You got Young Jock, you know, well-known hip-hop guy, especially people from the South. He had a couple slaps, to quote T, a couple slaps back in the day. It's good to see he's still doing things and finding ways to keep relevant and expanding his brand. So I'm assuming he has some kind of relationship to whatever's going to be going on with that show, or at least he's showing support to a friend. So that's going to be pretty cool. We're talking about spiritual things. I always find it pretty fascinating when people who you don't look at as being in the spiritual space, as far as like theology and talking about philosophical concepts related to those kind of things, getting involved in the spiritual realm and the spiritual industry, because it's like, are they begging these kind of things, or these are accurate reflection of what they believe? Is it just they're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks? So it's always kind of interesting to see how this stuff unfolds. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that video. That's just a precursor to the video, this one right here, where we see a little bit more of what he was talking about.
Unfortunately, a lot of Black people are misinformed and they fear it.
Yeah.
And like I spoke about before, that is a form of oppression.
Sometimes they make us a stereotype.
Mm-hmm. Take away their spirituality, take away who they are, take away their identity, their voice, you know, everything, their children.
Yeah, everything.
Take away everything that they care about that makes them their power. And I just feel like hoodoo was a way and voodoo was a way for our ancestors to keep some of that power. Just like every other form of oppression that we are, again, like with wealth, we're gaining back. We've had a Black president. We've had all these things that we're gaining back, right? So why not your spirituality as well?
So yeah, this is, again, a similar narrative we covered in the past, dealing with Zoe and Corey Holcomb, and what was the name of the intellectual irritant? I can't remember what his name was, but similar things again. It's the same old. If it's old, it's better than the new. So when they say gaining your power back by practicing some of the hoodoo and the voodoos, a lot of that is troubling in a number of ways. One of them being Africa's a big continent. Presumably, they're saying, like, going back to what we worshipped before we came over here to the Americas. That's I guess the assumption that we should have when we listen to what she's saying. But people don't even realize that Africa is not a country; it's a continent. and it has all kind of different spiritual practices and beliefs in it, from Egypt all the way down to Nigeria and then the Golden Coast. You're going to see all kind of different practices taking place. Who's to say which one is the oldest? Part of the problem with that is a lot of those ancient pagan religions in Africa, they didn't write down a lot of the material. So you're not going to, it's not like the Quran or the Bible or the Torah or a lot of the books from for Confucianism, where a lot of that stuff is written down and documented so you can know a little bit more what's going on and where it came from and the meaning behind the different concepts. But why do we just assume because it's old, it's better? Why do we just assume just because it's not what we have now that it's more powerful? That's what I want the audience to really think about. And on the Vulcan Soapbox, we encourage people to think critically. Notice this is not me saying what she's saying is wrong. That's a different part of we're going to go over. But initially, I'm just more so saying, why make that assumption? That just because old.
Is it legitimate? I mean, being older, that means original, the first one, right?
Well, older doesn't mean the first. Older just means older than before. Like, I might go buy some onions from the store, and then I forgot I bought some onions. I go buy some more onions. So you got older onions, you got newer onions, and then you got the first onion ever. That's the worlds apart. See, but again, which even with that question right there, that's kind of my point, is like, look what our mind does. We just automatically just assume because older means first. Just because we go back to voodoo, does that mean that was the first religion? We don't know how close that is even to the first religion.
All right, well, not saying first, but just before the newest one. That's still
so yeah, I mean, like, we gotta figure out for ourselves, we gotta have some type of epistemology, some type of rubric to determine when is older better and when is older worse. If you go to most people's homes, they have some things like fine china that's nice because it's old, right? People go to boutique stores and antique stores to find things that are old and nice and cute. But when it comes to software, people want to get that new. The PS, the new PS, the new Xbox, whatever that one happens to be. So typically things that are old, you don't use them, they're just for looking at. If you look at things that people appreciate because they're older, an old chair, an old dish. What are some things that are older that we even cars? People have to get old cars. That's not their everyday car. So, and you use religion every day. You use your spirituality every day. Typically, what's newer is what we use most often. It's more durable. It's become more efficient. Sometimes better quality. So everybody has to establish for themselves. It's just not the assumption that older is better. Sometimes newer is better. Sometimes older is better. So what I just think when people hear people talk like this and saying how we used to be and they took this from us and took that from us, how do you not know that even hoodoo or voodoo, whatever you think your ancestors were practicing over there in Africa, how you know that they weren't conquered by some other people group? They had a different religion that you're just not aware of, and then somebody came and conquered them. Yeah, and so they got rid of the guys, they deleted the men, took the women, gave birth to them, and then they gave them that practice. And so as far as you're thinking, oh, because my mom practiced this, but your grandfather didn't practice that.
Yeah. Yeah, they could before hoodoo, like when I think about this, they could have been practicing something totally different, and then who knows, hoodoo came. Oh, hoodoo's American based, but voodoo could have came, and they was probably doing something way different before voodoo. That's a
yeah. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah,
and that's my whole
like
point
you said earlier, because a lot of stuff hasn't been written down. A lot of the African spiritual practice, it's not a lot you can find on it because a lot of stuff wasn't written down. So
yeah, and so the point I'm bringing this up is I think we got to weaken the confidence in a lot of these assumptions that we bring to the table when we're having these conversations.
Weaken the confidence. Okay.
Yeah, it's because what happens is somebody makes a comment like that, and because it sounds good, we just go, yeah. Like we think, oh, it's first, so it's better. We don't know that that's first. And then we brought this up many times on the show before. The religions we practice here in the West didn't come from the West, so they came from over there too. There's been plenty of books written about how some of the slaves that came over to America were Muslim or Christian, or some believe they were Hebrew Israelite. There's a very vibrant group of people that are at the mall selling oils and on the street corners, shouting people down, that believe that the people that got brought over here were the Israelites, and they were already on the Torah. And so when they say the hoodoo and the voodoo and those types of things that give us our power, how can they demonstrate that? What civilizations that were practicing hoodoo and voodoo? And we got to be honest with ourselves. When you read books like the Odyssey, when you read different ancient religious books and stuff like that, people's religions and spiritual practices, whether it's the Vikings, they believe that was an indication of, and can be used to determine how powerful their nation was, how powerful their God was. So you got nation A and you got nation B. Part of how to determine who's the more powerful nation, the one that wins is the one who had the most powerful God. That's a part of that's a part of history. One's playing the one God, one's playing the other God, and they're both saying, hey, look, this guy's going to help us in battle.
So are you...
Hold on. Before you ask the question, I just want to make sure everybody gets this. And so part of that belief might be, if you lost, your God wasn't as powerful. But go ahead, what do you got?
So what do you say, that when the colonizer took over Africa, the African guys wasn't powerful?
That could very well be said. Could very well be said. Somebody can make that case legitimately if we're talking about, because remember, I'm only bringing this up because she said power. We lost our power. We got to get our power back and things of that nature. And she's tying that into the religious practices, the spiritual practices. Well, if those religious practices are so powerful, why they didn't last very long? Why you got to go through all this work to get them back?
That's a good question. Yeah.
The Vikings aren't still advancing Norse mythology anymore. They got wiped out. Zoroastrianism and Babylon, they got wiped out. A lot of these religions, their gods, quote unquote gods, weren't powerful enough to sustain that nation. And there is a real psychological and sociological aspect to this. The more systematic, the more scalable, the more unifying your religious practice, the stronger your society is going to be. So,
you see that, and the West taught us that. If you look at the West civilization, you see how
that's how it works with absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works with constitutions. You got some places that didn't have written constitutions. Some did go from Articles of Confederation to this, to that, to this, to that. Those are all unifying documents. It keeps people on the same page. In the Book of Eli, remember the Book of Eli? I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yeah.
The villain in that movie, his whole thing was, if I can get access to this book, I can control these people. I can control this thing. I need a unifying document. I need something that has the words written a certain way to where it unifies everybody. Then I can be in control. So so you and I right now can create a religion, and we can do as awful of a job as we can, and nobody would subscribe to it, and it wouldn't unify anybody, and people probably would hate us for it. Or we can really put our heads together and try to come up with a religion that really works and successful and is unifying and empowering, and we could probably find people that will listen to us and follow us, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, the most smart thing to do is to piggyback off of religions that are already there. That's what the most Jehovah's Witnesses, Nation of Islam piggybacked off of Islam and Christianity. Mm-hmm. Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, they piggybacked off of Christianity. Those are some of the biggest religions in the world. And so that'd be the best idea, us to just piggyback off something that already exists, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Confucianism, which is not well known in the West, but those are some of the best ways we can get to that point. Going back to what she's saying, she's talking about the power. That's all speculation. Can she demonstrate that that's one more powerful? I'm not saying it's not more powerful. Well, I am saying it's not more powerful, but bigger than that for the audience, because the point of this is for you to use your own mind and ask better questions. There's a quote that we like to go by: judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. The question we should be asking is, how can she demonstrate that it's more powerful? Historically, that's not the case. Historically, they lost and they got pretty much wiped off the earth for the most part. The two biggest religions, Christianity and Islam.
Mm. Mm.
Then you got Hinduism and Buddhism, and you got other big religions that have been able to survive.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying? Because when you think about the structure of this country, what keeps this country intact is how they're able to revert back to the Constitution, right? Because it's something that was written down, what you were saying earlier. So that keeps the country intact because they got something they have to go off of to, be consistent in the rules. But for African spirituality, I didn't think about this. That the fact that now who knows? Some say if you look at Chancellor Williams, he said a lot of the libraries was wiped out. So maybe it was written down. I don't know for sure. Or let's just go with the case if they didn't write this down. We pride ourselves on, when I say us, like a Black culture, quoting a lot of these African proverbs, like each one teach one. When a Black elder passes away, a library goes with them. So most of we pride ourselves off oral tradition versus documenting things. That's actually any, you want to add to that or any thoughts on that?
Well, real quickly, do you know if the live on Facebook is public? Are you able to see it?
Yeah, it looks public right here. Hold on, let me see. On your Facebook, yeah.
It's public?
Yeah, it says it.
Okay,
you're live. What's going on?
I was just making sure it was public.
Okay.
Because mine keeps going to the one we did last week.
Really?
So I just wanted to make sure when I click on it, it go, fresh pops up. So I'm not seeing the one where we're live right now. But anyways, that's fine. So yeah, going back to what she was saying, in short, just so we can get to the next video here, I just want to let the audience know, think for yourself. When people are saying things, don't assume that old is better. Sometimes old is better. Sometimes old is worse. What that's called in philosophical terms or logical terms is genetic fallacy. It's when you base something's merit off its origins and not its current context or meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why that's important is because we're not going to judge the religion based off if it came first or whether the slaves were beholden to that religion before they showed up. That doesn't make that religion better or right or more potent for you. It just means that some people practiced that before they came over here. And you've got, again, Africa was a big place. There's all kind of different spiritual practices. I think I've read some numbers, over 800 different spiritual practices in Africa.
Yeah.
And as far as like the non-traditional or the what's the word I want to use? Organized religions. It was ones that are not organized religions. Because you had Islam all throughout there, you had Christianity all throughout there. The oldest church is in Ethiopia, and that's in Africa. So people got to understand that when they're listening to people like this, that don't fall for the sophistry. If somebody wants to advance their religion, then advance your religion. Tell us why this religion is a better religion than Islam, than Christianity, than Buddhism. Tell us why. Is it written down? Can I look it up? What claims does it make about the universe? What claims does it make about spirituality? What claims does it make about the family? Think about the most important things to you, how you raise your children. The Quran speaks to that. The Bible speaks to that. Confucianism speaks to that. What does hoodoo say about that? What does voodoo say about that? How you manage your money. Sorry, go ahead.
And also that I think for our culture over here, why people are a lot more open to these other spiritual practices is because I think that African Americans in this country have a unique relationship with Christianity that other cultures or ethnicities doesn't have, right? It's like a double-edged sword. On one end, you can argue that the Bible, the practitioners back in the day was the oppressors, was used this to oppress our people. And then in the same sentence, there's a lot of evidence that show that the Bible liberated our people too. So it's an interesting relationship that that people in this country have with the Bible. So I think that
Yeah.
not having to,
My issue
more
with
open
that,
dialogue. Mhm.
yeah, my issue with that kind of thinking is we're just conveniently stopping at that place in history.
Mhm.
We can go back 100 years before that, 200 years before that, 500 years before that, 1,000 years before that. That wouldn't be relevant anymore.
Mhm.
You know, like I wouldn't want to base my spiritual practices and
Oh, I see. Yeah.
my worldview on one place in history when this thing goes back far beyond that.
Mhm. That's
See what I'm
that
saying?
recency bias. There,
Yeah, it'd be like me and you creating a basketball league, and no basketball has never existed before. We created a basketball league in 1900s,
Mhm.
and then in 1970, somebody decides to use basketball to oppress people. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And then somebody in the 2025 goes, yeah, we have a weird relationship with basketball because it was used to oppress people. It's like, yeah, but that's not what basketball was doing in the 1900s.
Yeah.
Like you're picking. Why pick the 1970s when it started to happen? Why not pick the 1950s, 1960s? It doesn't. That's not a true representation of what basketball is. That's somebody bastardizing basketball or using basketball for their own evil purposes. So somebody would have judged it based out of that little small place in history. It'd be like that's anachronistic. It's not reasonable to do that. That's clearly somebody misusing and abusing it. Christianity originally was the religion of slaves and the poor and merchant class people. That's who was the original Christians, and it was illegal to be Christian. They were being persecuted for it. So that fits right in step with slavery. It fits right in step with that. That's the history of it. It didn't advance primarily through the sword. It advanced by people who were the most destitute and those who were struggling the most against their government, against their neighbors, and all kinds of different things. Those are people who were the early Christians. So that fits right along with chattel slavery. So there's another way to look at that, is my point. But I think that a lot of times people just spin the tired old narrative of they took our history, they took which one was ours? Tell us which one was ours before Christianity or Islam came. How you know your family wasn't already Christian or Islamic before they got over here? It was already one of the biggest religions in the world, if not the biggest religion in the world at the time.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. And that's been documented.
That's been documented.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why do we make that assumption? And just that people just say it and everybody just kind of goes along with it because it sounds good. And because of poor associations we make in our own mind about the fact that we're American and we are Christian, and we go, oh yeah, Christian's America. So in Africa is what? Africa could be very well Christian too. So anyways, that's what I got to say about that point. You got anything on that, or you want to move on to the next one?
No, I think we covered some ground, learned some things. I like your perspective, breaking it down. I do got something to say. When people do make criticism towards Christianity, it is usually what happened with us during slavery. You don't hear the narrative what was going on before that more often in this country. Most time when people bash and they'll have their harsh criticism of Christianity is usually they were usually referencing slavery or Jim Crow, So yeah. All right. So I mean, we're still on the topic of spirituality. This next video we're gonna cover is rapper Nipsey Hussle, and he shared some tips why he was successful in his business. Why his business was successful. He gave some personal tips. Let me see if we can see this. Oh yeah, you can see it. There we go. All right. Let's go.
What would you say has been your biggest mistake?
My biggest mistake in music?
And it could be life, music, anything that you feel like I could have handled that situation better, but I'm glad I went through it.
I think I would say not trusting my instincts sometimes. Sometimes, I would, and not to sound sexist, but even just as a man, we so logical and we so driven by logic and so driven by facts that sometimes we can't move without facts. But if you got trust in your gut and you got trust in your instinct, and you learn that as you grow older and you mature, that you sometimes you don't need facts. You can just go off your gut and how you feel about things.
Damn.
You know what I mean? So just being confident in, I don't need confirmation. If I feel it, I trust how I feel. I know my intentions is pure. My instincts is like connection to a higher understanding. You don't need the facts all the time. Just go off how you feel. And so I think that I've learned to listen to my gut and my instincts more and be confident in making decisions off of that.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
Yeah, so the thing about when we listen to celebrities communicate and creatives, they're not known for their eloquence of words so much, or their hyper focus on being technically accurate in the articulation of a concept. So I'm not nitpicking him specifically. I just want to deal with the concept. And part of the issue is the ambiguity in what he's saying. If I were to try to make what he said more technically accurate, when he says, I don't need the facts, I can go with my gut, I would say that we don't at times have time for all the facts to come in. We have to make judgments. We have to take leaps of faith.
Especially for practical reasons,
For practical reasons, am I going to marry this woman? Am I not going to marry this woman? Am I going to take this job? I'm going to take that job. Am I going to invest in this business, or am I not going to invest in this business? There's some knowledge that we don't have access to, and we may never have access to. And there's some that we may have access to, but it may come too late. It may not come to after you already make the decision. And so that being the case, there is a point where you're having to trust your confidence in the information you have available to you already. That's a far cry from going with your gut, not going with facts. And I think people will hear this false dichotomy of it's either going with facts or going with my gut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that's what he's saying. He seemed like a pretty savvy businessman. I think he was saying that I go with my gut when I don't have all the facts that I would like to have to make the decision that's most educated and beneficial. There's things I'm not going to know. There's things around the corner I can't see. But based off what I can see, based off the pattern that's already been established, I think I have a good reason to make this particular judgment or move forward in this way. So I think that's part of the issue when I hear a lot of people think, and the reason why this is important, like people say all the time, like, I just go with my gut, I got my intuitions and stuff like that. And people hear those things. And there's a quote that one of my favorite pastor of mine used to always say, a guy named Elder G. Craig Lewis used to say that whatever the parents do in moderation, the kids will do in excess. Whatever the parents do in moderation, the kids will do in excess. So part of my issue with these kind of quotes is that people will hear this thing and they'll go, yeah, they're going to take whatever he said and make it even less moderate than he made it. And he already kind of made it very loosey-goosey and ambiguous because he's speaking as a creative. And then somebody will take that's already kind of a rubber ruler situation there. You don't really know what he means by what he's saying. You kind of feel what he's saying, but you don't really know what he's saying and how it exactly applies. And somebody will take that and make it even more fluid and ambiguous. And so then you have a situation where people are just, what we see now, people going with their gut against facts. Now, he didn't say I go with my gut against facts. He talks about he doesn't want to be sexist, but, men tend to go with the logic and stuff like that. Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, obviously, he's not the kind of guy that's going to go against logic. If you make good business decisions, you're going with logic. If you have investors, you can't sell your investors a plan that goes against logic. It's not going to happen. And these are savvy business people who want to make a return on their investment. So people need to hear this with the right ears. What he's saying is you may not have all the information. I think what he's talking about is people having certain fears or reservations about making certain moves. In the book From Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about how the most successful people weren't the smartest or the fastest or anything like that, the strongest. It was people who were willing to take certain risks. So there's an element of taking risks, and that's what I think Nipsey Hussle, talking about taking risks as far as, trusting his gut and his intuitions, whatever the case may be, how he worded it. Those things can be important, but it's based off of the evidence he's available to him. It's not in spite of evidence, in spite of logic, in spite of the facts. And that's why I wouldn't want somebody to hear it the wrong way. And I think this is important because this opens up the doorway to all kind of crazy perspectives that we see already happening. People are, trying to manifest certain concepts and ideas and realities against sound reason, against sound judgment. Whether it's a lady saying, I need my man to be this, this, and this, and this, and this, and I just going against sound judgment based off the population of men that are available, or somebody saying that, hey, look, a lot of us young black men that was going to go to the NBA. We ended up being, I don't know what that was. A lot of men. Yeah, a lot of men wanted to go to the NBA and end up being 5'7" with a 30-inch vertical, talking about they was going to try to go to the NBA. At some point in time, you got to realize your gut, your intuitions, your desires, your dreams. That's all it really is. And that's also a part of it too, is when these creatives especially are talking like that, saying intuitions and trust my gut, that never really gets defined. Is your gut your dreams? Is your gut your hopes? Is your intuitions your assumptions you already bring into the world? How do you vet those things? How do you know those things are true? A lot of us, we count our makes, we don't count our misses. So we have our gut feelings and stuff like that, and it doesn't pan out, we just move on. When we have our gut feelings and end up being accurate and true, and we get what we want, we're like, yep, I always trust my gut. But who's tallying that stuff up?
You see them when they play in the lottery, playing in numbers. I won this back in 1984. They don't count.
1985, 1986, 1987, 1988. You see them? They don't count none of that.
So I say that it definitely with quick decisions, like trusting your gut is useful, practical, quick decisions, and even like crossing the street. I get that. Sometimes you don't have to have a whole research to make those decisions. So, but like you said, he is an artist, so. A lot of times when they having these type of conversations, they don't go in depth like I would like them to, and that's why it's good we're doing this show, because other people that's watching this could not take the words as, what's the word I want to use, as law. I guess I can't think of another word, but
and they'll misappropriate and misapply some of the concepts that he's communicating, because again, it's very vague, and it appeals to our ego. It appeals to our ego to say, I should trust my intuition. And that's also a part of it as well. I mean, the advice he's giving could be very much haphazard advice and irresponsible, because he may be really good at his gut. He may be really good at trusting his gut. He may be really good at trusting his intuitions. What percentage of the population is like that? Now, most people think they're really good with their intuitions and their guts. That's just how people are. We're all pretty narcissistic and think the world revolves around us. But truthfully, we all a better judgment would be judging your friends and family. How many times has you heard somebody talk about their friends or their family, be like, that person's crazy. That person, you always be wrong about this. Now, you talk to that person that they're referring to, that person thinks they're always right because they're counting their makes. People that are not you are counting your misses. That's how it goes. People that are not you count your misses. People that are you count your makes.
Yeah.
I think I saw this thing on Facebook. It was talking about how, I think it was a professor in front of his class, and he was like writing on a bunch of different problems, and he got one wrong on purpose, right, for the experiment. But he got all the rest right. And then somebody raised their hand and said, hey, you got that one wrong. And it's like, lesson in life. People are always going to focus on what you got wrong. They didn't even bring up all the ones you got right. And so that's how people are going to judge you based off your misses. You're going to judge yourself based off your makes. That's why on the Woken Soapbox, we always encourage peer review, so you get both.
So that's why you said talk to their family members and their friends around them.
Yeah. Hey, look, you had to rate my intuition 1 out of 10. What would you say? Because they've heard you make predictions. They've heard you say, oh, I bet this is going to happen. Watch this. I could be watching a movie together and be like, watch what happened right here. And they get it wrong. You see what I'm saying? And that person who got it wrong gonna forget they got that wrong. Because who cares? It was a movie. Nobody knew anyway, blah, blah, blah. We're going with their life. The person sitting next to you was like, nope, you was wrong about that. And so it's important to have those people speak into your life too, so that you don't get too high on your horse. The scriptures would tell you not to think more highly of yourself than you ought to think. And we got to recognize that we have this desire, this proclivity to overestimate ourselves and to think very highly of ourselves. Even people who think lowly of themselves have areas in their life where they think too highly of themselves. It might be them thinking too highly of them, judging themselves to the point they think so lowly of themselves. Sometimes it's like you think more lower of yourself than you should because you trust your judgment so much. Get that peer review. If you think you're trash and you suck, talk to people around you. They may be like, no, you're actually better than average. So your assessment of yourself could be indicative of you still being overconfident in your ability to assess yourself. Even if you don't think highly of yourself. But I'm saying that people will be like, well, some people struggle with thinking they think too lowly of themselves. But why do they trust that judgment so much? Did they get a peer review? There's people that know them well tell them that about themselves, or that's something they made up about themselves because they struggling with some type of depression or insecurity for whatever reason. Sometimes our insecurities are legitimate because we really should be insecure in those areas because it's not our strong suits. It may be one of our weak suits. And so there's going to be a lack of security there for obvious reasons. But going back to what he was saying in this video, I just want the audience to recognize that just because you have a gut feeling or you have an intuition does not mean that you should always go with it. There's better metrics. Epistemology is the study of this. It's a theory of knowledge. How do we know what we know? Now, in some things in life is going to be benign where they're not utilized the deepest understanding of how do we know things. But whenever you're going to communicate and teach people, you're going to tell people, hey, look, trust your gut. I trusted mine. Look what it did for me. I think I brought it up before. There's this Henry Cavill, the guy who plays Superman. There's like this meme going around and it says like, just walk up and talk to her. That's what I do. And it always works for me.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, if you're Henry Cavill, whatever his name is, then yeah, you can do that. But the average guy on the street can't just walk up to him and just assume that it's going to work for him. That's anecdotal fallacy. In the same way, just because you trust your guts and intuitions and generally it works out for you, because it didn't always work out for you, no matter what you're saying. You know, we know that, for instance, because unfortunately, he's not even here with us anymore. Yeah. Did he trust his gut when he made that decision that cost him his life? That's a more darker road to go down, a scarier road to go down, you know, but we got to really be honest about that.
Yeah.
Was that a gut thing that he did that didn't work out in his favor? And then somebody did something to him through their gut reactions and intuitions or whatever, and then they end up in prison. And I think that person ended up getting, are they still around or no?
Yeah. He got a lot of years in jail time.
I thought he got attacked in there or something like that.
Yeah. He's still living, but he's still living a few times. Yeah.
Okay.
But...
So yeah, my point is just saying, like, you know, in every situation, y'all, there's better ways to vet, you know, what direction you should go in than just your intuitions and your gut feelings. Nothing wrong with trusting that when that's all you have left and you don't have any more information to go off of. I remember me being a director of a medium-sized company. One of the issues that my boss had with me, he said that I would wait too long to make decisions because I wanted more information to come in. So hey, there's a overcompensation on the other end. Me, I love to have information come in. I love to make judgments based off of having all the information I possibly could have. And sometimes I didn't have enough time to do that. They wanted decisive decision making at that time. They wanted to resolve, like, hey, you can make a mistake and you can apologize for it afterwards. Now, sometimes when they catch you up, they'll be like, you can apologize afterwards. But then if it happens and you try to apologize, no, you should have known better. So sometimes it's a setup. You never really know. But my point is just saying that both sides can be detrimental to a person's success. But you win some, you lose some, but you live.
Yeah. And my problem was when he prefaced saying we could be too logical. Now, if he would just start off saying, well, you know, this is my experience, trusting my gut, it was a negative connotation with being logical, men being too logical. That was my issue. So, you know, trusting your feelings without evidence, we discussed epistemology, the benefit it has on our everyday life. Trusting your feelings, it undermines justified knowledge. So just keep that in mind for the audience. I want to let that be known. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that was pretty good. I want to...
Pretty good? Thank you.
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right. Nah,
Yeah.
nah, he did a good job because these topics that's going on in hip hop or in the streets, unfortunately, his untimely demise, we have to apply a lot of these thinking mechanisms and really have some serious conversations about the way we think and the way we move, man. And I think you covered that pretty well. Not pretty well. All right, let me.
And people got to realize right thinking enhances, right actions.
Yeah, decision making.
As you think, so are you. So whenever you have these concepts in your mind that are a little bit disjointed and don't make sense all the way, that are unreasonable at times, especially because it strokes our ego. Oh yeah, trust my intuition, trust what I already think, trust what I already want to do, trust my gut. Obviously, all of us would want to trust our gut and our instinct because that fits our ego.
It appeals to mysticism too. This is appealing to that.
Yes, it appeals to a certain mysticism. It's almost like
emotionalism.
Your own prophet, your own God. My whim is right. That's what that turns into a little bit. But we have better metrics, better ways of figuring it out, y'all. Epistemology, look it up, learn it. Vulcan Soapbox. We're only supposed to be on for like an hour, but we gonna be we already 40 minutes in. What we got next?
40 minutes? Wow. We got a few videos left.
You didn't think we'd have a lot to say about this stuff.
Nah, I didn't. I'm like, man. And talk about no Voodoo. Now, shout out to the Voodoo out there. I'm close by the
we already covered on the centers a little bit.
Yeah, let's shout out to the Voodoo practitioners. All right, my guy. Next video, I got my guy Charleston White, very controversial guy. He's had a lot of strong opinions. Let me go ahead and pull his video up. I'd like to say a lot of reasonable thoughts. All right, here we go.
In the law, I'm not trying to get out of no trouble. That's what a snitch do. A snitch is telling to wiggle out or something. I'm just telling. No reward, no nothing. I just want to put a nigga ass in jail, nigga. I'm not breaking the law. I'm not trying to get out of no trouble. That's what a snitch do. A snitch is telling to wiggle out or something. I'm just telling. No reward, no nothing. I just want to put a nigga ass in jail, nigga. I'm not.
Charleston White.
Yeah, first thoughts that come to mind about this. We've covered the snitching thing numerous times. We got a whole podcast where we debate that part out and we show that there's so many different opinions on what it actually means. I want to focus on something that I've been hearing a lot lately. I think I was listening to BG Knockout talk about on the Vlad interview, and he was talking about if something doesn't apply to your life, then why would you be concerned with it? There's this rugged, I've heard it said, rugged individualism that we kind of have, where everybody kind of just lives in their own rooms, and somebody not do anything that bothers you, then don't worry about it. Even if somebody is doing something negative to somebody else, if it's not affecting you, then leave it alone, right? And you see some counter movements when it comes to the bullying movement. You see, at least when it comes to children, people are saying like, hey, look, leave that kid alone, don't bully. You see that happening with political affairs where they're saying, hey, look, America first. Let's just focus on America's problems. Let's not.
Sorry about that.
Let's not do this cosmic quest for justice around the world. And some people look at that as reviving imperialism, or if not that, just this quest to right all the wrongs around the world. And some of them are like, they're not even asking for your help, and you're just going over there and volunteering them what they need to be doing. So I think there's got to be a fine line. There's a quote that I always like to go with that says, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So when it comes to this snitching concept, Charleston White's point is typically, and this is most people would say, is a snitch is when you have two criminals doing crime and one tells on the other. That's snitching, especially if it's to help them get out of some trouble. So if the first is not quite snitching, the second one is probably the most typical definition of snitching. People are doing it, and that's why he's addressing that part. I'm not wiggling my way out of any kind of trouble. I'm telling just to tell, just put somebody in jail. And I think that he makes a good point with that. I think people got to recognize that it is important for people to tell on people at certain times to clean the streets up. To clean the streets up. Whether it's kids in the classrooms being bullied. If you see a kid being bullied, there's a couple of mindsets you can have. You're middle elementary school, say you're watching a kid getting bullied for no other reason that they just are getting bullied by some kid, maybe because they're smaller, maybe because they dress funny, maybe because they talk funny, maybe because they look funny, whatever it is, they're being bullied. You're not a kid that's getting bullied. You may be even kind of favored by most people, so you don't get picked on. You could easily stay quiet. You don't got to say anything. Or you could take action. You could say, hey, look, leave him alone. That's not right. Just because he looks different, or just because he acts different, doesn't mean he's any more deserving of being mistreated. Now you're risking the bully messing with you. Or you're risking other people around thinking that you're not as cool anymore. Because you're defending somebody that they've so socially deemed to be uncool or unworthy of being received by the bigger group. And everybody desires to be received, to feel loved, to feel like a part of a group, to feel like they're appreciated and they're heard and seen.
But what if go ahead. I was going to think, what about the people that say the reason they don't like to get involved with things they don't care about, don't concern them, they want to protect their energy? What do you say to that? Like, prioritizing your energy and what you got going on instead of adding to your plate.
I mean, I think it just depends on the context. Like, I think when you're looking at, like, again, sticking with this elementary, like, how would you apply that to this elementary example of somebody bullying a kid, and then you're another kid that's watching it happening? Is that kid protecting their energy by not getting involved? In a sense, they are, but that could be seen as cowardly. There was a time when that could be deemed as cowardly. You're protecting your energy. Protecting your energy, I guess, in that situation would be like, they think well of me. They don't mess with me. So I'm just randomly lucky in this situation to where I don't have to deal with the repercussions of the bully not liking me or wanting to bully me. And so your energy is protected randomly, right? And so, I'd risk that by speaking up on somebody else's behalf. And for a lot of the black folks out there, my thing is, don't say you protect the energy and expect white folks to speak up on behalf of black people when there's racism going on. Because when white folks turn a blind eye to racism, black folks don't like that.
Yeah.
But they're protecting there because them helping you out could affect their community and how people view them. So a lot of it can be hypocritical. But aside from the hypocrisy element of it, I would just say that I think those of us who benefited from Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, and people like that, if you benefited from it, you owe it to others to do the same. Now, I'm not saying you got to quit your job and get put yourself in sackcloth and ashes and just walk around the universe trying to help everybody, but the little you can do, and especially as teaching it to the young people, a lot of the gang violence that we see, I always think about the movie Meteor Man. And I forgot, I was listening to some guy, he was saying, he was like, I remember I was watching, it was on the Adam 22 show. He had like this black conservative talking to his white nationalist. And the black conservative guy was saying, like, if white people get out of our way and let us police our own areas and stop sending the police over there, we'll take a couple guys with some guns and we'll get those young gangsters out of our neighborhoods. We can take care of that in no time. But we can't do that because the cops will get involved. So his whole thing was, let us police our own place. Let us do what it takes. Let us whoop these kids without us having to go to get CPS involved. That was his point. If we can keep the government out of our policing of our own areas, we can fix our own problems. Now, whether you agree with that or disagree with it, I do think that there's a kernel of truth in the fact that people do need to police their own areas. And I think in the black culture, as of right now, it's antithetical to do that. We tend to look at people who are trying to make things right and tell on the people who are doing the wrong things and educating and calling it out as snitches, as Uncle Tom's, Sambo, whatever you want to call it. But the movie Meteor Man, the hero wasn't able to get rid of the Vice Lords, I think they were called. the Vice Lords. I think I can't remember what they were. The gang was called.
Yeah,
in
I
movie,
haven't seen the
man.
movie in years.
Yeah, you got to watch that movie, man.
I'm thinking, yeah, I got to.
I brought it up a few times, but I mean, like, you know, they had got access to some powerful stuff to where it was hard for even the hero to beat them up. So the community had to step in and take care of those guys. And I think a lot of us don't recognize that, as Charleston White's saying, we do need to put some of the people in jail. We do need to tell some of the people. Some of the people is, you know, even from elementary to middle school to high school, we do need to start policing our own areas. I know a lot of Black folks from the hood that had a certain mindset. Then they get some money. They go into a nice neighborhood. They want to be able to sell their home in a couple years. They join the neighborhood watch. You know, they went from, you know, I ain't no snitch. Snitches get stitches to sending a complaint about somebody's trash can being on that curb too long. And who's to say there's anything wrong with that? I got a friend of mine who in high school got into a scuffle with somebody, and his parents had to pay money because he refused to snitch.
Yeah. Man, I heard a little bit. That sounds very familiar.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I figured you find that one familiar.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, talking about the guy Enos. That's a definitely good. I want to cover that because that's more personal. I really want to cover the effect that had on my life personally. How it not only did it affect my life, it affected the loved ones around me. I really want to do a whole breakdown of the influence that our culture. And you know what's? I say this. It's interesting that we know how bad the influence hip hop culture is, and we just can't stop listening to the music. It shows the power of that music because a lot of this music I was listening to growing up, I wouldn't want younger kids listening to that. As an adult, when I'm listening to this stuff, so we definitely got to do a whole show and really break down how that actually affected my life and my parents and people that really care about me. Man, that's
all of us.
very interesting.
I think we would all can sit down and reflect on how many people have been negatively affected by things that that we saw and we said nothing.
Yeah,
that'd be a sad tale, man. It would be a sad state of affairs.
All right, got one more video, man. One more video for the road, man. Let's see. This is more relationships. Marriage is a good thing, right? All right. Here we go.
Here's my advice to the young men out here who've had a lot of women and they're afraid to get married because they're scared they can't stay faithful. Don't marry the woman that you believe you can stay faithful to because she's physically your type. Marry the woman that you're afraid that you can't stay faithful to, but she's going to allow you to explain why you think the way you think and why you believe you need what you think you need. With the second woman, what you're going to have is intimacy, and that's going to keep you committed to your commitment. With the first woman, what you're going to find is that your sexual needs are met, but you never really feel seen. You're a better man than you think you are. Stop allowing the foolish thoughts to make you think that you can't do something, because when we make the right choices, the right commitments, there's a portion of our nature that's going to kick in, and it's going to carry us a lot further than we thought it could. Here's my advice to the young men out here who've had a lot of women and they're afraid to get married because they're scared.
All right. Anything stood out to you?
Well, that's one of those ones because there were so many different parts to it. I probably need to have a pen and paper and write it down. But just my initial thoughts on it is one thing that I just find disgusting about people that do videos like this is always just speaking to random people on the internet and telling them they're better than who they think they are. Why do we always make that assumption that people are better than who we think they are? There's all kind of evil things happening every day all around us, and yet everybody's good. Everybody's better than they think they are. People, if you eavesdrop on people's conversations walking through a restaurant, they're complaining about about friends and family and strangers and coworkers. People snitching on people at work for stuff that they do too. People putting people in all kind of bad situations. So I just don't like it. To me, it's sophistry. It's meant to play to people's ego. Obviously, I'd want people to say good things about me and say all that but how much can you take? I was talking with a friend about this earlier about how, a stranger can come and compliment you and people will just really eat that stuff up and be like, yeah. I'm like, that person don't even know you. Why would you take? I would take a compliment from a stranger with the same level of acceptance as I would as a insult. You don't know me. Unless it's some type of behavior I'm displaying in the moment, that may have more justification behind it, a little bit more. But generally speaking, the people don't know you like that. So some random guy on the internet saying I'm better than I think I am, that means nothing to me. You don't know me. You don't know if I'm better than who I think I am, I'm worse than who I think I am, or I'm just about who I think I am. And that could be an insult. If I'm really good, some people are really good, are very self-aware people. So him telling me that I'm better than I think I am, I might consider that an insult. Like I know exactly. I know where I am better than you. Some stranger on the internet knows who I am and where I am in this situation. But a lot of us eat that stuff up.
You remember that famous interview when T.K. Kirkland was on Mike Tyson's interview? I mean, he was on Mike Tyson's podcast. And he was like, man, Mike, you're a good person. He was like, man, he went off on like, you don't know me.
Yes, exactly.
Yo, that was intense, man.
Yeah, a number of people have done it to Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson had to check him. I mean, I remember that happened with Shaq too. He was on The Pivot. I don't know if it was called The Pivot at the time, but he was on that podcast. And the guy was saying, he was talking about his marriage and how he ruined his marriage. And they were saying, well, I'm sure both of y'all played some roles and this, that, and this. He said, no, it was me. I ruined it. They were like, yeah, but I'm sure they were trying to convince him out of his own situation. Look, you don't know. There's a scripture that says, a rebuking tongue will receive more honor than a flattering tongue. An open rebuke is better than hidden love. I really think that in today's culture, we've missed that so much. We really think that just telling somebody something that's going to make them feel better about themselves in the short term is better than actually getting to know what's really going on and giving them accurate, apt advice.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to have their ego stroked.
So that's what it is our egos are eager to hear these type of
compliments. Yeah, we'll take compliments. People don't even know us. Just somebody that randomly on the side, hey, you're really smart. You could tell I'm really smart by the 10 seconds you've been sitting next to me, or you're really beautiful. Okay, is that really beautiful relative to everybody else? You saying I'm really beautiful to you? Are you saying I'm not ugly? What does that even mean? I have no idea. People typically, they like to have their ego stroked. They don't even ask any more follow-up questions. They just go with whatever the person said because they needed that in that moment. At least they think they did. And they probably didn't. A lot of what I see a whole lot, and just what the Bible talks about, is lovers of self. We're all pretty, egoic. All of us are conceited. I don't mean all of us, literally all of us, but that's a big deal. We don't feel like we got to check with anybody else. We don't need to vet any thoughts. I'm going with my gut. I'm going with what I think, what I feel, what brings me peace. I don't have no regrets. People have done all kind of atrocious negative acts towards people in the past, and they still have the audacity to put on their Facebook page, I don't have any regrets. Everything I did made me who I am today. Made me who I am today. So that person you was bullying in middle school, you don't have no regrets about that? All kind of trauma you caused them. So because you are where you are, which is not a deity, you're not some type of elevated status, you're still just human. People that don't like you, people that like you, people that deservedly don't like you. You never had to apologize. You never mistreated somebody. I remember there was one lady, she was talking about how she started dating women. And after she dated women, she called all the dudes she used to deal with, a lot of them at least anyway, and apologized to them. She was like, I saw the worst versions of myself of those women I was dating. And that opened her eyes. The lady Nora Vincent was talking about how there was a lady who was, pretending to be, took the class to become a man for like a year and a half or whatever. delivered life as a man, took the acting classes, got a fake beard, you know, and went on dates as a man and would go back as a woman and stuff like that. She talks about how brutal women were towards men. And people I see mainly putting that I don't have I live life with no regrets is women. Men say it too, but I've heard a lot of women typically do it on Facebook, and I'm like, all the people you done mistreated. You had Joy Taylor saying on numerous podcasts how she's mean to men. And you're saying you're mean to men. She told Paul Pierce that. She told, I forgot the other guy. Oh, what's the 9 Keys? 19, what's that dude's name?
19 Keys.
19 Keys. She told 19 Keys that. And he brought it up to her. Like, you said you're mean to men. And she says she takes pride in being mean to men. And this is probably the same lady that would say, I don't have no regrets. Everything that I did made me who I am today. And my point is just saying that's the society we live in now. Everybody thinks whatever makes them better, regardless if it was good or bad, means they shouldn't have any regrets about it. Pragmatism. If it works for me, it's good. Even if it's to your disadvantage. Even if it hurts you. Even if you can't survive or live with yourself after what I did to you. As long as it made me who I am today. But everything you do makes you who you are. Everything you do makes you who you are today. It's a meaningless statement to make, period. Because does that apply to people that did things to you in your life? If you had an abusive parents and now you're 35 years old, should your parents be like, I don't regret what I did to you because it made you who you are today? Where do we take that logic? It makes no sense. To me, it's just textbook narcissism, low empathy thinking.
Wow.
Anyways, I forgot how I got on that topic. What were we talking about again?
Oh yeah, we was talking to that guy that was giving relationship advice.
Oh,
and
yeah, he
married
said
man. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So married man, that didn't want to get married because they was afraid of cheating, and he was, I guess coaching them, letting them know like they're not as bad as they think they are. And I remember that's what you started off saying, like a lot of people on these spaces are so willing to tell them how good they are, and not just acknowledge that there's a lot of bad people out here, man.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I wouldn't even say, there's good or bad people out here. Is that good people are doing bad things, and bad people are doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
However you want to define a bad person versus a good person, typically we define good and bad. I mean, we're just being honest, based off who's affecting us. If we're going to be honest about it.
Yeah.
Just in casual conversation when you're around people and they're saying, well, that person's a bad person right there. They're not saying they're bad in comparison to like a Hitler or Stalin or something like that. They mean, I don't like this person because my relationship with them has advantaged them more than it's advantaged me. Or they've done some things I didn't like. But if they've done any of those same things to somebody else, do they see themselves as a bad person? Nope. I just made a mistake. I was dumb. It was a misunderstanding. So we have a lot of liberty and benefit of the doubt that we extend towards ourselves, and a whole lot less of it to give to others. So if we're just being honest, that's what the good and the bad thing is. So going back to what he's talking about as far as like a man who, so my understanding of the video is this guy's saying that people should have may have reservations about getting married because they're afraid they may cheat. And he said, don't pick the person who looks the best that you think I won't cheat on her because she's so fine. Pick the one that you're able to be vulnerable with about that your desire to have other women, because then you'll have intimacy with them as opposed to just having good physical intimacy with the other person. I think there's some truth to that. I think a lot of men who've been married or who've considered getting married have had to consider that kind of a thing. That's a very legitimate question to ask. I wish really that'd be a good panel conversation to talk about that. I know a lot of men have wrestled with the idea of could they be faithful in a marriage, especially if they've been out in the streets for a long time. And I'm sure even women have had to grapple with that idea as well, because their numbers and body counts are starting to rival a lot of men's. Not the top men, but they're rivaling a lot of the mid-tier guys as far as their ability to get women. So because of that, there's a lot of studies that show they're not able to really be happy in relationship and marriage because they've had so many partners. But I would think like everything else, it comes down to discipline. I do think, that's a tough one. Finding a woman that you can talk to about those kind of things, you don't know until you try. And so you try, you can ruin it. You see this happen with, you see this, I've seen this many times with women online where they'll say, I wanted my man to be more vulnerable with me. I wanted him to display more EQ and be to open up. And so he did it, and now I don't find him attractive. He cried in front of me, or he told me, some of the vulnerabilities that he's dealing with, some of the weaknesses that he has, or some of the things he's struggling with. And I don't know why. And I hate this about myself, but I don't find him as attractive anymore. So if a man is doing
and at
that,
times that could be permanent too, the way they feel about you.
It could be. It could be permanent. We don't know. And it may not even be permanent. Maybe it may just last long enough to where the relationship doesn't work anymore. It may last 6 months, and that 6 months may be a hellish 6 months that they don't recover from. Had it made it to the 7th month, maybe it would have cleared up. They don't know because they never made it that far. Because once she loses attraction for you, she's losing respect. For a woman, that's losing respect and admiration for you.
Yeah.
That's going to affect, does she cook? Does she clean? It affects the bedroom. It affects, him being able to lead the household in the right way. It affects all those different things. So when it comes to what he's talking about, I think that he's asking the man to take a gamble that he can't know. It goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier, is that the gut, the instinct. And that's going to really be a gut or instinct kind of thing based on the best available information you have about the woman, because you're not going to know how she's going to respond. And truthfully, she doesn't know how she's going to respond to you being that way in most situations. I've heard of stories of men who won't even smile around their lady or laugh because they don't want to give off any kind of indications of weakness.
Yeah.
Or vulnerability. So that's how serious that game gets. How I've always looked at it is depending upon your skill sets. I hear Speaker Wilson, we got polarity.
Shout out to Speaker Wilson.
Is that Champ?
Yeah, that's Champ.
Oh, what's up, baby?
What's up, my guy?
We got Champ, man. Hold up, man.
Yeah.
What you doing up?
Yeah. That's ironic.
What's up, man.
We talk about old stories, and he's in the comment.
Yeah.
He was around during that time for, like I said, my personal story I need to tell.
Well, that plus, I forgot who told me this in high school over there. He was like, "You always trying to save somebody." I forgot who. I can't remember who said that to me one time. I don't know if it was Mole or somebody said that to me one time. Because people would try to, pick on somebody else, and I'd be like, well, what's wrong with, people dressing funny or whatever it was. I'd be like, what's wrong with that? Like, he's cool. What's wrong with that? And I think all of us get that now as we're grown, is because you realize it's kids. We didn't have a lot of control over how we dressed, and all that stuff was our parents.
Yeah. And
So
people went through hard times.
People went through hard times.
Traumatic.
I always say at a black school, but I don't know, because, even when I went to schools, because I went to a lot of schools, even when I went to schools that are more predominantly white, I wasn't involved in white culture enough to know how serious the dress code was for them. I remember the K-Swiss and Tommy Hilfiger movement when I was in middle school. The white guys were rocking, but I don't know if they were hazing people that didn't dress cool or not. I can't remember that. Yeah, I can't remember that part, but I know in the black schools, if your gear wasn't fitting right, or you weren't hitting for the culture, it was
a tough time, man. Led a lot of people to the streets, a lot of men.
Yeah. You got guys, and I don't mean any offense out all the folks out there listening to it, but you got guys, and I was even a part of this when I was much earlier coming out of high school. If you couldn't have all the cool clothes and the cool shoes when you were in high school, as soon as you got out, you got your own job. I saw your closet was filled with J's and all kind of stuff, wasting money. And if you were lucky to have friends who were white and Hispanic and different cultures, you noticed they're spending their money buying other things. In the black community, we just got all the shoes and buying all the gear, spending our last check to have clothes, especially because we're trying to make up all the clothes we didn't have when we were in high school and middle school. So You know, some of us grow out of it, some of us don't grow out of it. But the reality is, you realize how detrimental it was to our financial understanding as we get older. You know, I work in an environment now, a couple of environments that I work in where, you know, it's a very diverse group, and the white people I work around are astounded by the amount of money that Black folks spend on clothes and shoes, especially shoes. You know, I'll see white guys wear the same shirt twice in a week. You ain't seen none of the Black folks wearing the same shirt twice in a week.
Shout out to a speaker who said, "What it do?" D, tell me the story while I'm here. Oh, while I'm there. Yo, so what was the topic we was talking about as far as
we're talking
Charleston
about snitching?
Yeah, started snitching. So shout out to Speaker Wilson and Vulcan. We went to high school together. So I can't even call it a fight. I was attacked. Let's just say that I was attacked, right? So
you want me to tell that part, or you want to tell it all?
Go ahead, yeah, you tell the part. Go ahead.
So we're sitting down eating lunch, and there's a guy from Holland Park, I think, probably, who comes and sits next to Enos, and I don't know if he punched or mushed you.
Mush.
Huh? Mush, right?
Hand.
Yeah, he kind of open hand mushed. And we're seniors in high school, and we're not from there, and so. So he's the guy kind of throws up his signs, whatever he does, and he's a little guy too. And then he kind of walks away. And I'm eating my lunch, and then Darius is there, and Enos has asked me the question. He goes, "Did I just get punked?" And I was like, "Man, that don't matter, man. We're just trying to graduate. Neither one of us are from here. We just trying to get out of high school, man."
Like, no, we Black. This does matter.
Yeah, this does matter. So he's like, "Nah, man." I'm like, "Look, I tell you what, man. I'll do whatever you want to do. Just let me finish eating my lunch first, and I'll do whatever you want to do." So he was like, I can't let that ride. I got to go, get mine." And everything happened so fast. You get why he wasn't able to really react on the spot like that. It was just kind of like out of nowhere. We're just eating food. Next thing you know, somebody walks up and does that, says some stuff, and then walks off. And so we go outside. They almost get into it at that point. I guess the principal or somebody kind of broke it up or whatever. Then we going up to the third floor or whatever, and you see, what's his name? What was his name again? Kerry?
Yeah.
So you have Kerry and whatever other guys that were in his group, and he was right there, and a big circle forms, and Enos is saying, "You and me one-on-one. You and me one-on-one." The fight doesn't end up happening. It gets broken up. Yeah, it gets broken up. And what's happening is they end up going to the office. I didn't see the rest of this part, but then you can just take over like what happened from that moment. So basically, at no point did Enos have anything to do with it. He didn't start any kind of fights. He didn't throw a punch at somebody. He didn't display any type of aggression towards anybody. I think it was probably over some kind of misunderstanding anyway. But now you got to take over from the part where after the fight gets broken up or the potential fight gets broken up, then where it goes after that.
Yeah, so it gets broken up. We are in the principal office. It gets, a lot of stuff is going on in the office, and they have the cops at the school. So the cop is asking us, because we both in they said, "That's crazy, bro." Yeah. So he's asking us like, "All right, what happened?" And I'm like, "Yo, tell him what happened." And he didn't ever tell him what happened. We got arrested. And that's why I mean about certain people. I just speak for myself. Our loyalty towards the culture, or just how we run, how things are ran in our culture, that was considered snitching. I'm not a street guy or anything like that. I put the responsibility on him to go ahead and tell what happened.
Yeah, because you didn't feel that liberty to share it, so you were like, you gotta be the one to say what happened. Because if I do it, I'm snitching. So you say what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
he didn't say.
Man,
so instead you just say, "Hey, this guy, I got assaulted, and then they try to jump me or something like that." Instead of that being what was said,
Yeah.
You didn't say that part. He didn't say it either. So now both y'all gotta go.
But yeah, I could have been. So this is a criminal complaint. I was attacked.
Yeah.
That's what I should have said. Yeah. So I didn't do that, man. And I actually, got locked up, went to jail, and unfortunately, my parents had to pay for a lawyer, and I had to go through this whole probation area and in and out of court, and they finally dropped the charges because I was getting charged with inciting a riot, disorderly conduct, and I was looking at some months, and I didn't do anything, and I could have easily stopped all that, just in the principal office, and I didn't do that. So
If you just would have realized, like Charleston White said in that video, I'm not telling a wicked out or anything. I'm just telling on somebody because that's what happened.
Facts.
I just woke up and now I'm in this person's world of horror. And how much did that cost your peoples? Probably.
It cost some money. We had to get a lawyer. So I think my dad spent it was some money. It was some thousands.
So thousands of dollars went out of the household because he didn't want to just say what happened because he didn't want to be labeled a snitch.
Definitely. Even telling the story is not as it's not easy telling this story. I'm actually embarrassed about that because these are my parents that we new to the city too, and me just making a smart judgment call just to cooperate with authorities that was really trying to help me out. I chose otherwise, man, and in a lot of ways I suffered and my parents suffered. And my family members suffered. Even Voca had to come up there. He had to leave school, and he had to be a witness.
Oh yeah. So we got to get into what happened the next day.
This was crazy. I got suspended and all of this, and
so Champ,
this my last year.
Sorry, go ahead. You finish.
No. I'm saying a lot of consequences, and I'm the victim. So that the streets and black culture is intertwined with each other. It's not a distinct difference between the street guys and
civilians.
Quote regular civilians. Just we got to do a better job. Just just really.
I think really we got to let people know it's masculine to not be a criminal. It's masculine. Yeah. It's powerful. It's potent to not be a criminal. Mm-hmm. Being a criminal, participating in criminal activity does not make you more masculine. Doesn't make you any more courageous or bold or any of that kind of thing. It just makes you more foolish and makes you somebody who's more of an extroverted thinker who thinks first and then who does things, shoots first and then asks questions later.
You say, bro, our school was like that. That was locking folks up. And, I was hesitant saying because I was trying to find the words. Really, black, we have to realize and understand that part of the biggest threat in our community are the people that's promoting gangster rap and street culture. Regular black folks, that's a conversation we really need to have. That's what a lot of our problems as a youth came from a lot of times, so.
Yeah, I would say the biggest problem is the sympathizers. You have people who are actually actively out there doing it, and then you have the people who are on the fence, but they're sympathizing for it. They enjoy it. Yeah, they relish the stories, and they allow that to depict to themselves what a man and what a man isn't. A lot of my friends growing up, even the ones who weren't out there actively living that lifestyle, they still respected the lifestyle. They respected a stand-up guy, just like you see in the Italian mafia movies. The guy who becomes what do they call those guys once they become the made man? You see that when it comes to, what 50 Cent say. I brought it up on the last time we had a debate about this topic, but 50 Cent said, I don't like Preem and them. One thing I can say about Preem is that he lived according to what he said.
Masculinity and aggression are two different things. Shout out.
And then the end of that story was, so the next day I'm in breakfast, eating my food, and I'm sitting next to Nick Peterson, and it's all of us, from our bus sitting there eating, and all of a sudden I'm eating my food, Nick's eating his food, and all of a sudden I see everybody from my table just get up and walk to the other side. And I look up, and it's all the guys from yesterday who who wasn't happy about what happened. And mind, I just there making sure my boy didn't get jumped. I had no idea what was going on in that situation. I didn't have no beef with nobody that I was aware of, and they all came to get me. And luckily, Nick told them like, "Hey, look, y'all might want to leave this one alone."
Yeah.
And they tried to appeal to him, and he was like, I know, but let it go. And because of the relationship that Nick had with a lot of those guys, they left me alone. But
yeah,
I
and
might
he
not
was
even
like
graduate.
300 pounds too. That helped. No,
It's great.
He's 2+ though.
He's a big guy. He's definitely a big guy for his age at that time, especially. But what's crazy about that is when you look at that scenario, my understanding of it has been obviously it's been like 20 years, but the policy that I was aware of was that if you get suspended, it's for like 10 days, and then if you got suspended for 10 days, you don't pass that semester. So I was always thinking in my head, like I got put there in Augusta because I had to go live with my dad. I didn't want to be there. And I was forced to be there, leave Texas and go over there to spend part of my junior year and all of my senior year there. So I was just trying to graduate and get back to Texas. That was my mindset. Graduate, get back to Texas. And I knew that anything that could happen could cost me that. If I got to stay there an extra year, if I don't graduate, whatever it is. And so for me, it was like I didn't want to do anything to mess that up. And so whenever guys kind of have beef and kind of mess with me, I'm like, dang, it's going to cost me to be stuck in Augusta for another year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was my mindset at the time. I'm trying to get up out of here. You know, because as soon as I graduated, I was gone.
It was gone, man. Yeah, me too. That was a lot, especially last year in high school. You was faced with those kind of, those problems, and you got to navigate this as a black man, how to navigate that. So just for those that's looking, the younger ones, man, I recommend just tell. That's why I appreciate Charleston White, because he actually forces he forces us to have these kind of conversations in our communities that we never had before on this level. So
I'm seeing Whack 100 talking to who was Whack 100 talking to recently? He was talking to somebody.
Freeway Ricky Ross.
The real Rick Ross. He was talking to him, and he was like, all that stuff, because he was like, my name is certified, whatever Rick Ross was saying. And he was like, yeah, but all that stuff that you was doing, all the stuff that I was doing, gangbanging, that stuff ain't nothing to be proud of. We were destroying communities.
Yeah.
And you never heard Wack talking like that 5 years ago. That's a direct reflection of his interactions with Charleston White. Now, I don't endorse everything that Charleston White says. He be going off the deep end on some things. When he talks about street culture, hip hop, snitching and stuff like that, I think he brings an element to the conversation that we've been missing for a long time. Yeah. He just happens to have the gift of gab in a way to where people can't just bully him off of his pulpit. So he gets all of his free time to communicate his ideologies, and it's been beneficial because I'm seeing so many people more emboldened to stand up against street guys, pulling guys' cars, whether it was Boosie or whoever it was, and he's talking, and the person like, I ain't gonna talk about that dude. Because the biggest gangs, we've known what the biggest gangs were the whole time. The police. And when they convince the civilian to side with the gangs while the gangs bully the civilians lose. Because now the gangs know you're not going to tell on them because you live by the same code they're living by, but you don't get all the benefits of that code that they get. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't got to tell on you because you ain't doing nothing illegal. But you can't tell on them and they're doing things illegal to you.
But you said something earlier that's not talked about as much, as far as talk about how the black sympathizers are probably worse than the people that's actually committing crimes. You want to go more in depth about that.
And what I meant by they're worse, I don't mean the individual sympathizers are worse than the people who are doing those violent acts against the community. I'm saying it's worse for us because that's a much larger group. If you put 100 black folks in a room, I'm talking about the black community specifically, what percentage of that is actually out there gang banging and doing all the violent crimes and stuff like that? What, 5%?
Yeah, they do that.
Even if we give it 10%, that's 10 people. Then you're going to have like 70 to 80 people who are sympathetic to people like that. That's all they know.
That's all they know. They don't have both parents.
They don't have both parents. That's a part of systemic racism and white supremacy. Those are
white supremacy.
Yeah, and some of those guys can rap a little bit. Then they're even on a higher platform because we're thinking that just to get it to the man, they're the ones going against the authorities that are in power, whether it's the police or the government. They're the ones, the big middle finger to all those groups and organizations. So then they even get the intellectually astute part of our community that also has anti-establishment, but for more intellectual reasons. But they're not going to risk their plush jobs to go out there and actually do this stuff. So they're going to support the criminals who are also anti-establishment because they're similar in that proclivity or that desire. So now you've got this big group of Black people who are sophisticated and intelligent, all the way to the blue collar or white collar, whatever you want to say, who bump and jam all the criminal music, and they are sympathetic to that movement. That I'm saying that's worse for us than the actual 5 to 10% that's doing that crime. Where I live now, I'm around the people that are African. I had a homeboy of mine. You talked to him on the phone before. He knows. He was saying where he's from in Angola. He was like, yeah, there's matter of fact, it's him and there was another place. I can't remember if it was Zimbabwe or somewhere like that. There's 2 different African guys I talked to, and they were like, we have that stuff over there too, but over there it's not celebrated. Those people, we know who those people are. They'll chop your arm off with a machete or whatever, but we don't celebrate them. Nobody talks about them. That's what they do. We know they do that, but it's not like over here in America where you're going to get women off of that. know? So they're saying that they have that same elements over there, but there's not a big group of sympathizers like it over here in American culture, where you got suburban Black kids who are talking about repping their flag and being Crips and Bloods in the suburbs because their value system is similar to that of the guy who was raised on in Slauson or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I say it's worse. It's worse in impact because, again, it goes back to that quote that I said before: "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And then also another quote that is in the Bible talks about that people who do those things worthy of death, and them who give approval to those and take pleasure in people who do those things are worthy of death. And so the bigger group is the people who take pleasure on all of it. They're the ones, that's the bigger group. So when you have the bulk of the people falling in that category, there's no real room for change. And that's actually what the text says. It gives certain people the ability to just kind of freely walk around being that kind of way.
You just describe the hoods in America right now.
Yeah, and the suburbs. One thing about our community, a lot of times we find a lot of the things you find in the hood in the suburbs too, because they have the same value system. Because hip hop is so encompassing, you see the similar value system over there. They want to they want to communicate the same way. They want to have the same body language and mannerisms. They listen to the same kind of music. They get inspired by the same type of concepts and ideas and messaging as the person who's more closer to that type of behavior.
It's like, it's like the street guys, they got a real good representation. I don't want to say the best representation. They got the intellectual Blacks that's defending them, the street guys defend them, and the defense lawyers defend them in court. They got all kind of help. They don't really have to talk and defend themselves. Man.
But you see, it's different when you look at Italian mafia movies where you have the dad who goes to work and does what he got to do, and he tells his son, I forgot what movie was it, Goodfellas? I think it's the Goodfellas movie where you have the main...
It was Bronx Tale.
Bronx Tale?
Yeah. We was telling son the working man is not a sucker.
Oh, let me look it up real quick. Okay. Bronx Tale. Because there's the one where
Robert De Niro.
Yeah, Robert De Niro.
You remember in the beginning of that movie, the little boy didn't snitch on the mobster that shot the guy. And the son told Robert De Niro was the dad. He said, I did a good thing, Dad. He was like, yeah, you did a good thing for a bad man,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Bronx Tale, you're right about that. And but it's that one, and plus there was another movie too, I think it was Goodfellas, where the main character, his dad didn't want him to be involved in that lifestyle, and he chose to do it anyway. He was just drawn to that lifestyle. I think I could be wrong about that, but my point is saying that in that Italian culture, at least when you see in the movies, that there was the people who were living a normal lifestyle as Italians who were in America now, and they wanted to get all the rights and access to the American dream as everybody else that's living there. Then you have the mafia, which they looked at was making them look bad.
Yeah. You see that in the movie Scarface. That's what the mother told Scarface. She said, "You make hardworking Cubans look bad."
Yeah,
She
exactly.
told him that. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have that line. In our community, you had that line is there, but it's a lot more blurred.
It was like that more in the 90s. I know we need to cover The Rock. He had a lot of good episodes on that. It's just it's more blurred than it was back in the day. I think.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah,
For sure.
so.
Because for us, a lot of times we look at it as all black. So I'm not going to attack that because that's black too.
Mhm.
Even if it's the guy selling drugs on the corner.
Mm.
You know, I remember I listened to that battle rap. We covered on the show one time where the battle rap guy was like, even the guy who's on the corner, even the guy who's on the porch, he's still technically from the block.
Yes,
technically from the block, like it's technical because of that. Like, yeah, sir. That's just that level of ignorance where he was saying that even the guy who's not hustling, but he's just on the porch, he's still technically from the block. Says you wasn't on the streets, you was on the block because that's where you was raised, but you wasn't in the streets out here like that. And it's like that's actually a point that people hear in that battle rap circuit, even the broader community as well. And that's a really good point in their world. Like, you know, like that game song about being outside. We was outside. You know, we weren't just on the porch. We was actually outside getting things done. And it's like a certain like rite of passage, and you're more manly and you're more masculine and you're more, you know, so you should be taken more seriously because you're out there doing, you know, terrorizing your own neighborhoods. But anyways, we're an hour and a half in. What else you got? You know, so I don't know if we really covered that last video that much anyway, but
yeah, we did the best we could. With a lot of.
Yeah, we got any more comments? We done with the comments?
I think that's all the comments. Shout out to Speaker Wilson, man, my guy. You need to come back on, bro. Yeah, so thank y'all for tuning in. This is the Vocal Soapbox. I am Enos, man. I'm glad that y'all are tuning in. Hopefully y'all definitely benefit for, you know, the guides and tools that we recommend. These tools work. Application of critical thinking, epistemology, these things do help you navigate complex issues and help you get better at solving issues in your life and problem solving. So please take heed to that, man. Vulcan, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching the show. Just the Vulcan Soapbox, all the folks out there. We are here to endorse and pedestalize critical thinking skills. Thinking, going beyond what people want you to see, the sophistry. I was just watching a video recently when somebody was doing an expose on a certain personality, or a podcast or personality that's getting pretty prominent out there, and he was just talking about how he's starting a cult following. And it really made me think, like, part of the purpose of what we do is to address cult-like behavior. People that say, believe me because it's me. It's me. Come on, you know me. It's me. You know, this one person in particular was endorsing the belief that we don't just look at what somebody's saying, whether it's true or false. We look at who the person is who's saying it, which is a genetic fallacy. And so I just want people to understand out there is that you got to arm yourself with education about how to think about things in a critical way. Don't let anybody take your ability to think from you. Don't let anybody tell you to trust their intuitions, trust their guts, trust their whims. And the last thing I'll say in the book of Acts, the Bereans, when Paul was preaching to the Bereans, one thing that Paul told the Bereans was, Paul called the Bereans noble, because when they were researching what he was saying as he was talking. Be that person. Research people are saying, make sure it's accurate. Outside of that.
All right, man. Let's make critical thinking again. We're checking out, man.
I don't have the little things come popping up. It's crazy. I used to have the little
oh yeah. The fireworks, right?
It ain't doing it. Yeah, it ain't doing it no more. Oh well.
All right. All right, till next time.
Yes, sir.
Guy got